I'm going to talk about Licht Leuven, which is a collaboration between the City of Leuven, local cooperative EcoPower, and local NGO Leuven 2030. For those who do not know the City of Leuven, we're mainly known for for our 600-year-old and internationally renowned university. Also for several research institutes, often linked to the university, and also as a beer capital because of the headquarters of AB InBev, who are in Leuven. The last couple of years, we're also building up a reputation as a climate city a little bit, but we still have to be very modest about where we are at this point. The City of Leuven has climate ambitions, ambition to reduce carbon dioxide emissions with 40% by 2030 and to reach climate neutrality by 2050. But because of the Fit for 55 program the European Commission launched earlier this year, we're also trying to convince the City Council, and probably will convince the City Council to increase our climate emissions as well, and to reduce CO2 emissions with 55% by 2030. For the climate action plans and climate actions, we've already received some international recognition, of which for example, the European Green Leaf Award of 2018 is a good example of that. Despite all ambitions and international recognition, the effective CO2 emission has not decreased as much as we hoped it would. And as you can see on this graphic, we are at this moment the target of 2030 is not within reach, and it's even farther within reach if you know that these are the relative CO2 emission per inhabitant and per employee. City of Leuven is a growing city, so we're just to say we're not on course to reach the goals that we set up for ourselves. This is an analysis we already made a couple of years ago. And what we noticed is that we needed a more integrated and action-focused plan. That is why we developed a roadmap, the road called the Road to 2050. It's a thick document written with input from experts of the university, the city administration, and other experts, and which aims to create a more clear action framework for the climate transition. The roadmap contains 13 programs and is divided into 6 clusters, which is accelerating the building renovations of residential and non-residential buildings. The second cluster is focused on sustainable mobility. The third one, the local generation of green energy, but also on the energy system. The fourth one, sustainable consumption, and there is a focus on green and resilient city. And the last one is facilitating the transition, which is about monitoring the transition, about participation, about funding the climate transition, about is actually more focused on horizontal programs. The seventh program is the most interesting for me. That's producing green energy. The program contains 9 specific tracks and focuses on district-related energy trend strategy, renewable energy on building level, collective heating and distribution systems, photovoltaics in general, wind turbines, and electricity distribution and storage. And it contains different milestones that we want to reach. And one of them, and on the very top of the slide, I'm not sure you can read it, is to have a local energy cooperative in Leuven. That is one of the milestones for 2025, that we've actually already achieved. The main focus is on making cooperative energy cooperatives grow. So this is more the how we came to the topic. On the other hand, the city of Leuven has sort of a participative culture, which is strengthened with a new city council, which started in 2019. Citizen participation in general is important for us, and especially if you look at the energy transition. And the vision of the city of Leuven is very similar to the vision of, for example, Rescoop, where we see the natural resources like wind and solar energy as commons. And we try to achieve that as much as possible from what is harvested of those commons is also used in benefit of the community. Participation is focused on clear communication, also hearing citizens' voices, strengthening the support for renewable energy, and last one, also financial participation. For us, that's also an important one, and which is also translated into a city council decision where we state that we aim for at least 50% direct participation in renewable energy projects in Leuven. In tenders that we write ourselves, we try to even go further than that. We did also notice that as a city, we don't have the expertise or experience to fully facilitate renewable energy projects. That is why we looked for a strategic energy partner through a tender, which was assessed by an external jury and which led to the appointment of EcoPower, a Flemish renewable energy sources cooperative of Rescoop. The strategic partnership does not include guarantees for renewable energy projects, but is focused on a broader cooperation. To make the cooperation more tangible and easier to communicate, we founded Licht Leuven. Licht stands for Local Initiative for a Cooperative Renewable Transition, or in Dutch, Licht means light. It is a broad cooperation between the City of Leuven, EcoPower, and the NGO Leuven 2030, but also with other NGOs, semi-public institutions and enterprises. Our common goal is to develop energy projects with direct participation and with citizens in general as well. We have different topics. The two most obvious ones are wind and solar. For wind energy, we focus on two things. One is the region, not only the city of Leuven, and the second one is also lands owned by the city of Leuven, which are not within the city borders. And the reason for that is that in the city of Leuven itself, there are limitations because of two airports nearby that at this moment make it impossible to build wind turbines on our own territory. But we do try to bring together municipalities in the region in order to achieve a cooperative action to develop wind projects together. Another focus, the sometimes easier one, is solar. We aim for large photovoltaic projects, among others on city buildings, which I will tell more about in 2 slides, I think. And what we also focus on from the city perspective is ambassadorship, to also convince, for example, the University of Leuven, banks, schools, to also install photovoltaics, and preferably in a cooperative way, if they are not doing the investments themselves. 2 other topics we are focusing on are e-mobility, for example, sharing electrical vehicles, cargo bikes, and also linking e-mobility with photovoltaics. which can strengthen the business case of both investments. And the last one is district heating. A good example of that is Dijlmolens, which I will still also talk about. And other projects, we also look for other projects, but the experience teaches us that the development of district heating projects usually goes very slow. One project that we already did was photovoltaics on 10 public buildings. We published a tender for that to look for a partner to install PV photovoltaics as a service, and direct participation was a parameter in the tender. And the tender was eventually awarded to EcoPower and ECO. EcoPower, a larger cooperative, already existing for I think 30 years, but I'm not sure. And ECO, which is a smaller cooperative in the region, and which still has to grow a lot. What we did was we took together the roofs of 10 buildings from the city and other semi-public institutions related to the city. And in total, 830 kilowatt peak was installed, an investment of 650,000 euros. It was installed by the two cooperatives, so with 100% direct citizen participation. So that is one of the projects we finished already. Cooperation also led to the participation of the city of Leuven in the Horizon 2020 project Scale, which started earlier this year. The main objectives of Scale are to advance the setup of new energy communities, making EU cooperatives more mature, for which we use are developing an instrument called the maturity scale. We want to develop a community of practice and a one-stop shop for energy communities. So we hope that the results of this project will be also useful for other cooperatives throughout Europe. The Leuven pilot in Scale is based on the Licht cooperation. Our aim is to develop a support organization for energy communities through the collaboration of a municipality and an energy cooperative, so the city of Leuven and EcoPower. And we aim to install, again, photovoltaics, residential and non-residential, a district heating projects of 40 households, an energy sobriety program, and to involve at least 250 people. The district heating project is an interesting one. We want to use a heating pump to take heat from the river Dijle to heat an apartment building of 40 apartments. And hopefully we can also harvest electricity from the Dijle, but we are not sure we're going to be allowed to do that. But that would make the project complete, so that we could also use electricity for the heating pump system. So that's in a nutshell what we want to do in the Scale project. Although that the project Scale itself has just begun for a few months or half a year, I think there are already some lessons that can be learned from our experience the last couple of years. The first one may be obvious, but visible projects create strong dynamics. I think from perspective of the city, we spend a lot of time trying to explain why participation is important, what we want to achieve, why we want to cooperate with an energy cooperative. But the moment we started working on the tender for 10 public buildings for the photovoltaics, it became more visible and became a lot easier to engage citizens. The second lesson we learned is that both partners, or all three partners actually in the Licht partnership, represent citizens. With the lessons learned, I think I can just finish with the third. And that is what I think makes the Licht cooperation strong, is that we use the sometimes unique strengths of each partner. And that is the combination of the city, which for citizens, but also for local companies and stakeholders is seen as a reliable partner. So a good ambassador for these kind of projects. Where on the other hand, the cooperatives participating have a stronger power to mobilize groups of citizens, have a lot of technical knowledge and experience in developing energy projects. That is experience that is not the city administration, and also have a strong group of volunteers who are willing to support the energy transition and to spend some of their time working on the energy transition without it being their job. And I think the combination of the two, if you can find each other, that it's really a good support, not only for cooperatives themselves, but also for the development of energy communities and for the development of energy projects.
Yeah.
So that was actually the the ending of my presentation. I'm not sure how many people I'm talking to right now. So I'll just stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions about this presentation. It was a bit chaotic.
For us all to arrive again. Let's take deep breather. And I think everybody's in the room now. And I would also say that we do not admit people unless there is because everybody who got the link should know I have it. Dries, I would say we take your questions in the panel and we'll move on to next.
Sorry, I really can't stay till the very end. So
okay, then we will take a couple of questions now. Are there any burning questions for Dries following this conversation? Please put them in the chat.
And if they're coming later, you are free to share my email address.
Yes, I think what we might be doing is we'll change the format in a way that the people presenting will take the questions now, so that because we have lost quite a lot of time. So let's do it that way, so that we make sure that the right questions are asked and people can get the information from you that they need.
Britt, I have no question in the chat, so maybe I think we can move to the next presentation, I think. Yeah. And thanking Dries, and sorry for the surprise of the presentation.
It's good for me to know that that can happen, so that we have to take into account the next time we're organizing a webinar.
So. Yes.
To be honest, I had a question to Dries. Dries, thank you very much for your presentation. I love your project, Leuven. And can you tell us a little bit more about the project of in 10 buildings, how it happened? So how did you make possible to a municipality to share the rooftop with investment only from the citizens? How this happened? Can you tell us a little bit more about the model? Yeah. Because in Portugal, the municipalities are they have lots of rules, and it's very strict we are very strict to these rules, and sometimes it's not possible to do things like this.
Well, for us, it wasn't easy either. So it was a lot of work for us to write a tender, which was okay with all legislation about public tendering, and still made it possible to have at least a serious accent on citizen participation. The model itself is actually rather easy. It's a third-party investing is the basic model, so it could also have been just an energy company or something. They invest in the solar panels, they install them on the roof, they have a service contract for them, and what they do is they sell the electricity to the municipality. So for that building, the city has two contracts, one from the energy net, from the electricity net, and another one from the solar panels, from the party who invests in solar panels. So that is also how they make a return on investment. The contracts are usually for 15, 20, or 25 years. And after that period, the photovoltaic installation is given to the building owner for free. So by then they have to make not only their investment back, but also make sort of a profit on it. And the way we did it in the tender was we looked for a partner. We set certain targets about the energy price for solar. So the price can't change over the period of the contract, except when the consumption in the building changes. So if there is less electricity consumption in a certain building, the price will go up because it will be harder for them to sell. They will sell less electricity to us. So that's basically what we did. So one of the parameters was the price of electricity. Another one was how much can you install on these roofs, because we don't want roofs to be half filled with solar panels. So there's sort of a balance between those two. And then the third one was how will you involve citizens in the project? And one of the sub-criteria was how will you involve them? How will you make it possible for Leuven citizens to participate financially in the projects? And there they had to describe a full plan, full action plan for how they would do that. Unfortunately, the two cooperatives, the consortium of two cooperatives, was the only candidate for the project. So it would have been very interesting to have a more commercial partner, for example, so that we could compare it. Because in general, there is still neutrality. And if a commercial energy company or service provider could deliver the same type of participation, it would be also okay for us. But we did notice that it's often far from the culture they have inside. So it's not really a match. They showed some interest, but they weren't really interested in the participation part. So, but we checked, we double checked, and we limited the number of points that were on the participation itself. So then it was okay. We did double check it, and it was legal to do it like that. And the tender itself is also used as inspiration for other cities, just like we also looked at other tenders from other cities before we wrote this one.
Thank you, Dries.
Brit, I don't know if there is time for one question. There is a question from Aveiro City Council.
Give me just 1 second. We're just adjusting little things. Alistair, would you be okay to speak after this question? Does that give you enough time?
Yeah, that's fine, Brett. No problem.
Thank you so much. That's great. All right. Yes, go ahead.
Let me see, Dries, if I will understand the question that is from the Aveiro municipality, and he's questioning the 10 buildings that were selected, and he doesn't understand if these buildings, so I will translate the question. In these 10 buildings, I didn't get if it was considered just the municipal owned buildings as a measure of exception from the public consultation process, or if you created any kind of municipal ordinance to go and move forward with the project. So I think it's really if
there was
speak a bit about it.
Well, there was a city council decision about direct participation, but it was not binding. So there it was more a principle. For the project itself, with the 10 buildings, it was also not, we didn't change any legislation for it. What we did was we took the liberty to create a set of parameters for candidates for the tender. And one of the parameters was participation. The argumentation from part of the city was that more than half of the Leuven citizens do not own the building or apartment they live in. And for them, it's difficult or often impossible to harvest solar energy. So we saw with this project actually potential for people who don't have the option to invest in solar on their own roof, to invest in solar on a public building. So that was the argumentation, and we just asked the candidates to write down an action plan in order to make that possible. So that's we didn't change legislation; it was all done within legislation that was already there. Also, the local government in Belgium, in Flanders, doesn't have the legislative power to change a thing like that. So we had to write a tender within mainly Flemish legislation. So we looked for how far can we go in this without doing anything illegal or changing legislation ourselves. So it's really a principle decision to give certain points to citizen participation in the tender, knowing that it might have an impact on the price. But I'm not sure it did, because the price was actually quite low in the end.